Well, welcome to the program, Father Jeff Putthoff. Father Jeff is joining me from Michigan in a much more beautiful setting than my own office. Father Jeff, you're really flexing here, being out in the middle of nature as you're doing this interview when I'm stuck in this little cramped studio office with a fake background. So I appreciate you being in nature and sharing with us today from a really beautiful setting that shows forth the glory of God. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to the retreat in Spokane.
Yeah, very exciting. You know, Father Jeff does Ignatian retreats, spiritual, using the spiritual exercises and other sources of insight. And you've been doing this for many years as a retreat leader and helping folks get connected to God. And I want to talk to you about that, like, for instance, the retreat that you're coming out to Spokane, the Immaculate Heart Retreat Center to do. It's an 8-day retreat. Now, most folks who have even gone on a retreat, most of those retreats are a day or maybe a weekend and are pretty filled with talks, conferences, small group discussions, lots of interaction. And what you're inviting folks into is an 8-day Ignatian silent retreat. So I would love for you to explain, why would someone want to do that? And maybe even better, why is it so crucial and meaningful for people today to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, a silent retreat, it's sort of a misnomer because there's lots of conversation on the retreat. The conversation, though, is focused between the retreatant and God. So lots of conversation, lots of opportunity to encounter and to have chats. Ignatius calls it colloquies, familiar conversations like we would have with a friend. We go away and we go into silence to help us be able to be focused with our friend and to be able to have that sort of directed conversation. What I like about an 8-day retreat is that there's plenty of time. I do also 3-day retreats, 4-day retreats, 1-day retreats, sometimes preached retreats. Many of those retreats are compressed and there's lots of information in those retreats. So you have talks, you might have masses, rosaries, stations. And so literally time can kind of get taken up, and the conversation with God is actually a little bit more difficult to have. On the 8-day retreat that we're going to have out in Spokane, what's great is we have ample opportunity to have prayer interspersed with some talks and mass. And so that's just, it's a time to relax, to be curious, and to be spacious with God.
Well, Jeff, I'm wondering an extended retreat like that, if there's a process of sort of emptying out, right? So the first, I don't know, 24, 48 hours, there's a sense of letting go, shedding the burdens, the anxieties that we might be carrying with us from the lives that we're living. And there's almost like a capacity, a receptivity that begins to open up as you get into the flow of really a different rhythm of life that is making, I love what your phrase was, ample room for an intimate sharing with the Lord. I love that. You probably have some like guideposts along the way, like, hey, here are some signs of things that are happening as you're going to be letting go of the frenetic or frenzied pace that probably a lot of folks have as they're entering into an 8-day retreat.
So one of my favorite images about a retreat is to think of a large ship and how large ships just can't stop. And so it's quite common for people to arrive with a lot of momentum in their life, a lot of care, concern, family, children, jobs, all sorts of things that are with them. And we just don't switch gears. In a sense, we take time. And in that process, and this is what's great about an 8-day retreat, I find that people on the second and the third day will be sleeping even more than the first day. They arrive and they're able to give themselves what they need so that they can actually have time for the conversation. But secondly, when you say to kind of offload maybe anxieties or worries, I like to think about our retreat rather in the opposite. I like to think about how we welcome all parts of ourselves. And so if we have an anxiety, a worry, a desolation, a care, a concern, they're all welcome on retreat. And what we want to do is make space, bring that spaciousness that we have, that ability that God has given us, this innate ability to be curious and to welcome all parts of ourselves. So in a sense, we're creating this time so that it can be a time of welcome. And whatever's there, we can have in conversation with the Lord.
That's beautiful, Father Jeff. It feels like there's a sense of saying you'll have the opportunity to discover God and experience God in every aspect of your life. And don't just think that you got to throw out all of these things in order to finally find God apart from those things, doing holy stuff.
Absolutely. So what I love about St. Ignatius, so he talks about consolation and desolation. So we'll talk about that on this retreat. They're normal parts of an adult spiritual life. And many people, to hear that desolation is normal and to be expected, and even an opportunity for connection with God, can be a surprise. And I love being able to be with people as that they discover that all of their parts, Ignatius says, we find God in all things, not just some things or only certain things, but in all things, because God is a part of everything. And so on our retreat, it's really the practice, the discovery, the exploration of how all parts of who we are and of our life and our world are imbued with God. Now, lots of times we may have interior parts of ourselves that are worried about that are scared about that are concerned about that, might be afraid of that, reticent there. And those are all fundamental parts of a retreat. We simply welcome them. We find out what they're worried about. We accompany them and we bring them to God.
So, Father Jeff, again, I'm talking with Father Jeff Putthoff. Father Jeff is leading an 8-day silent Ignatian silent retreat at the Immaculate Heart Retreat Center, beginning on July the 9th and continuing on until the 16th. On the 9th, it begins at 4:30 in the afternoon, and then it's done by 1 p.m. on the 16th at the beautiful setting of the South Hill of Spokane, the Immaculate Heart Retreat Center. It's just a lovely property. Father, talking about that's how we enter. Okay, so we enter the retreat. We give permission to encounter God in every part of our being, every aspect, everything we bring to the retreat as we are. We then are able to enter more deeply into the flow of the retreat. What would you say are some of the most important fruits that manifest themselves in the lives of those who make an 8-day retreat like this? And especially for someone who hasn't, it's like, all right, if that's what I'm going to be given in, what are some of the things that happen to folks who do that on the way out?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, the first thing is, in retreat, all we need is a willingness, simply to bring a willingness to connect with God. We don't have to have a plan, though oftentimes we come with a plan. We don't have to have an idea of where we need to go. We simply need to say to God that we want to connect, to have disposability. That's all, that we're disposable towards God. And God's grace, God's spirit works. I think what's oftentimes most surprising is the curiosity that people discover and the breadth and the depth of a God that holds everything. So oftentimes people will come in, like I have a favorite story that I always share on retreat. When I first started directing retreats a long time ago, somebody came in to see me, the third or the fourth person, and she kind of looked at me a little bit when she first saw me. We hadn't met yet, and it looked a little bit like she was disappointed. And so she sat down and we start talking, and I found out she was a religious sister. So we chatted a little more. I said, "Sister, hey, what grace do you want to pray for?" She said, "Peace. I want the grace of peace." And I said, "Sister, that's a great grace." So she went off. The next day she came in, she came through the door. You could just tell she was spitting mad. She was enraged. She sits down and she glares at me. And I kind of look at her and said, "Sister, how you doing?" "Terrible." I said, "Oh my gosh, sister, what's the matter?" The food is bad. My bed is uncomfortable. My room is stuffy. The people are noisy next to me. She lists off a number of things. And then she looks right at me. She says, what do you have to say about that? And for a moment, I thought, why am I doing this job? That's what I thought. But real quickly, I pivoted and I said, well, sister, it sounds like God has given you your grace of peace. And she about came out of her chair. What do you mean? And I said, well, sister, does it surprise you that God's gone right to that place inside of you that needs peace? Now, that was a real surprise for her, because peace for her, I think, initially meant I'm checking out, leave me alone, I'm on vacation, a number of things like this, right? But she had done one important thing, and a dangerous thing. She asked for a grace, and grace is giving God permission to move in our life. God has a different understanding for her in that moment of peace, a sense of peace to go to the place that really, in a sense, needed a healing, right? And that's the beauty of retreat, is when we and God meet, we both bring our perspectives. Our perspective and God's perspective meet. And that encounter is tremendous, and it's surprising, it's glorious, and people leave filled with a new energy.
That's so powerful, Father Jeff. That's a great story. I love that. I want to use an analogy and tell me how it fits. So when I have thought about retreats, sometimes I think of them as getting on the operating table. That you talk about praying for a grace, and then God gets in there and starts doing some work by exposing stuff. It feels like retreats are safe environments where the Lord is saying, okay, I got you for 8 days. And so I know that you're going to be in this rhythm where you're going to be praying and you're going to ask for this grace. It's kind of like getting on the operating table and kind of, I now have permission, or I've got the space to do some major surgery, because you're going to be in this more receptive, disposable, this more receptive position, so that I can do deeper work that would be much more difficult to deal with if I wasn't in an environment that was marked by the rhythm of a silent retreat. How does that fit? How does that resonate with you in terms of understanding retreats?
Yeah, so, my experience is God never dominates us. God doesn't do to us anything without our permission. That's why having grace is so important. And God really respects the fact that we need to be safe when that happens. So God is not a God of terror, a God of dominance or abuse. Rather, God is a collaborator, right? And so I think, to use your image a little bit, is we would want to find a doctor that we feel really, really comfortable with to move forward with, and a doctor who has a great bedside manner, maybe, those kind of things, right? We would check the doctor out. And I think all that happens on retreat, that we check our ideas that we have of God, we check our history that we have of God, and God has the ability to respond to us and to let us know more about God, and ultimately God's great desire to save us, right? But salvation isn't somehow like something that's just cut out or inserted into us. Rather, it's that relationship that we develop with God for all time. So in some ways, I think it works, but in another way, I really want to just talk about the relationship that we have ongoingly with a God, not only who created us, who saves us, but who invites us to be with him or her in the act of salvation in our world. So you and I might get off the operating table and be happy because, our bone is fixed. We don't go and be doctors. And yet that's the vision here of God, right? The kingdom of God. Come and do and be for others like I have been for you, with me, right? So in some ways, I appreciate it. And in other ways, I just think it's so much bigger and bolder than that.
That's beautiful. Hey, let's go. Yeah. Contemplatives in action, maybe, huh?
I love it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Father, I have one more question for you. So folks hearing about this 8-day Ignatian silent retreat coming up July the 9th, begins at 4:30 in the afternoon, continues to the 16th at 1 in the afternoon, that you'll be leading at the Immaculate Heart Retreat Center. It's called Experiencing God, Our Interior Movements Understood Using St. Ignatius's Rules for Discernment. A lot of folks can be weighing on one side of the scale. What's this going to cost? It's going to cost me some money. It's going to cost me even more time. It's going to cost me a withdrawal from the ordinary focus and activities of my daily life. That's what it's going to cost. I want you to respond to, well, what's it worth? Because I think that a retreat like this is worth so much more than a cost. So what would a retreat like this be worth for those who are able to evaluate, even discern? This is something that I feel a prompting to do.
So Ignatius has the rules for discernment. He has these 14 guidelines, right? And I like to use the term guidelines. Others might have suggested that we say guidelines for living a harmonious life. And I love that, the sense of being balanced. The image that I have is like the sunflower to the sun, that the connection that the sunflower and the sun have is that harmony. That's what Ignatius says we're all created to have, is this amazing harmony, this amazing connection, this amazing relationship with our Creator, with our God. In a sense, cost is irrelevant. I want that. That's what I'm made to. If I don't have that, what do I have? That's what I would say to somebody. The retreat is an opportunity to focus on that and to desire that and to come to know that more deeply, and especially to experience the bigness of God, bringing our spaciousness, our desire to encounter God.
Father, that is so powerful. I love it. The infinite treasure of experiencing communion with the living God. That's what awaits you on an 8-day retreat. Why would anyone want to compare that to the cost of a little bit of time, a little bit of money, a little bit of sacrifice of daily activities? So, well, Father Putthoff, I really appreciate your time today, willingness to share about this retreat. And folks, I don't know about you, but hearing Father Jeff talk like this, it's magnetic. It really, I know it's going to draw people in. Father Jeff, you speak very beautifully, and to be able to hang around with someone like you and helping to get guideposts and guidance for making an 8-day retreat, what a gift. It makes me want to come, sincerely.
Tom, we have a room for you. I was going to ask you ready to sign up, Tom?
I actually, you know what? As you were talking, Father, between you and me and everyone else that's listening and watching, I thought to myself, okay, what do I got on my calendar? Can I do this? Can I get to this? I am completely serious and sincere.
Well, you're welcome. Come on.
I am going to look. I'm going to check my calendar out, Father. So that's compelling, folks. You want compelling? Just hang around with Father a little bit. You get drawn in. So thank you.
I look forward to being out with the folks in Spokane and Washington, and just again being out with everybody. So I'm excited to be there.
Excellent. That's Father Jeff Putthoff. Thank you, Father Jeff, for being with me today.
All right. Bye-bye.